When it comes to opium and heroin, the Colombian drug lords are the first that come to the mind. However, in the last 2 decades, Afghanistan has left Colombia far behind, developing a global reputation as the dominant producer and supplier of opium across the world. No single entity is responsible for Afghanistan's uprise as the global drug leader, but an organization familiar to most: Al-Qaeda. In recent years, Afghanistan has seen a significant shift in the production and use of meth, a highly addictive stimulant drug. The rise of meth in Afghanistan is a relatively new phenomenon, and it is a problem that has emerged in the aftermath of the country's long and devastating conflict. This shift towards meth was triggered amid the increasing international pressure on regulating the opium production and supply from Afghanistan. However, a more relevant triggering factor was the natural occurrence of ephedra sinica, a hardy, sage-colored shrub that grows abundantly across central and northern Afghanistan. The plant contains a naturally occurring stimulant called ephedrine, the synthetic version of which is a common ingredient in decongestants and weight loss pills, and is often used to make crystal methamphetamine. That characteristic has made ephedrine-containing medications tightly controlled in North America and Europe. Even in Afghanistan, which has no such restrictions, it has been difficult for drug producers to obtain enough of the chemical for the large-scale production of crystal meth. Until recently. For them, the ephedra plant has been a game-changer, providing a cheap, local, and naturally abundant source of ephedrine. Unlike opium, meth is often produced in small, makeshift laboratories, and it is cheap and easy to produce. It has become a significant problem in Afghanistan, particularly among young people, and it has contributed to an increase in crime and social problems in the country. The opium and heroin trade in Afghanistan is worth over $6.6 billion per year, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. For such economic reasons, it is not uncommon for the Afghani government and enforcement agencies to ignore the global threat induced by its nationals, which has almost destroyed the country's multi-ethnic culture and history. The cultivation of opium poppy in Afghanistan has a long history, and it has been a major source of income for many farmers in the country, particularly in the rural areas where other economic opportunities are scarce. In fact, growing opium is drastically more lucrative to farmers than growing wheat, which has kept them motivated to continue cultivating opium. The production of opium increased significantly in the 1980s and 1990s, during the Soviet occupation and the ensuing civil war. It was fueled in part by the demand for drugs in the West, as well as by the chaos and instability in the country, which made it easier for drug traffickers to operate. The Taliban, which came to power in 1996, initially tried to ban the production of opium, but it eventually reversed this policy and began to tax and regulate the trade. The opium and meth trade in Afghanistan is largely controlled by organized crime groups and drug traffickers, and it is often linked to other illegal activities, such as money laundering and human trafficking. The trade is often conducted through the black market, which is the illegal trade of goods and services outside of the legal and regulatory framework. This is an actual clip of an Afghani opium farmer who has described how he smuggles opium to Iran, either hiding inside the tires or within wheat sacks. The black market is a major source of income for criminal organizations, and it is a problem that is difficult to combat due to the secretive nature of the trade. In recent years, the country has made some progress in reducing the cultivation of opium poppy. However, the problem remains pervasive, and the country still produces a significant portion of the world's opium. According to data from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Afghanistan accounts for over 85% of the global production. In 2020, Afghanistan produced an estimated 6,810 metric tons of opium, a decrease of around 18% from the previous year. In modern times, Afghanistan has faced a number of challenges, including civil war, foreign occupation, and the rise of extremist groups such as the Taliban. In the late 1970s, Afghanistan was invaded by the Soviet Union, which led to a long and bloody conflict that lasted until the Soviet withdrawal in 1989. In the years that followed, Afghanistan was racked by civil war and factional fighting, and in 1996 the Taliban, a hardline Islamic group, seized control of the country. The Taliban is a Sunni Islamist militant group that ruled Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001, after a period of intense factional fighting. The group was formed in the early 1990s, during the civil war that followed the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan, and it quickly gained control of much of the country. It was able to gain control of the country through a combination of military force and alliances with other factions. Once in power, the Taliban implemented a strict version of Islamic law, known as Sharia, and it imposed a number of harsh penalties for offenses such as theft and adultery. The Taliban regime was also known for its repression of women's rights, and it imposed a number of strict restrictions on women's behavior and dress. Women were not allowed to work outside the home, and they were required to wear the burqa, a garment that covers the entire body and face. The Taliban also banned many forms of artistic expression, including music and television, and it enforced these bans through strict punishment and the use of morality police. The Taliban's rule in Afghanistan was met with widespread opposition from many quarters, and the regime was criticized for its human rights abuses and its failure to provide basic services to the population. In 2001, the Taliban regime was overthrown by a US-led military campaign in response to the 9/11 attacks, which were perpetrated by Al-Qaeda, a terrorist group that received support from the Taliban. Since the fall of the Taliban, Afghanistan has been working to rebuild and stabilize the country, but it continues to face significant challenges, including an ongoing conflict with the Taliban. The United States invasion of Afghanistan was a military operation launched by the United States in response to the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. On September 11, 2001, terrorists affiliated with the extremist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial airplanes and crashed them into the World Trade Center in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., killing nearly 3,000 people. In the aftermath of the attacks, the U.S. government launched a global campaign against terrorism, with a focus on Afghanistan, where Al-Qaeda was based and where it had received support from the Taliban, the ruling regime in the country. On October 7, 2001, the United States and its allies, including the United Kingdom and Australia, launched a military campaign in Afghanistan, targeting Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. The U.S. invasion of Afghanistan was the first major military operation of the War on Terror, and it was justified by the U.S. government as a necessary response to the 9/11 attacks. The invasion was supported by many countries around the world, but it was also met with criticism and opposition from some quarters, who argued that it was a disproportionate response to the attacks and that it could lead to further violence and instability in the region. During the United States' presence in Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden, the founder and leader of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda, was killed by U.S. Navy SEALs in a targeted military operation in Pakistan on May 2, 2011. The operation to kill bin Laden was carried out by the U.S. military, with the support of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. It was approved by President Barack Obama, and it was hailed as a major victory in the U.S. fight against terrorism. Bin Laden's death was seen as a major blow to Al-Qaeda, and it was seen as a symbol of the U.S. commitment to bringing terrorists to justice. The United States withdrew its military forces from Afghanistan in 2014, after more than 13 years of involvement in the country. The decision to withdraw was based on a number of factors, including the conclusion of the U.S. mission to dismantle Al-Qaeda and to disrupt and defeat the Taliban, as well as the desire to shift the focus of US foreign policy to other regions of the world. Since the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, the situation in the country has remained volatile, and the conflict with the Taliban has continued. The Taliban has made significant gains in recent years, and it controls or influences a large portion of the country. The US has continued to provide military and financial support to Afghanistan, but it has not deployed significant numbers of troops to the country since 2014. One of the main reasons why Afghanistan is of interest to the world is its strategic location. Afghanistan is located at the crossroads of Central and South Asia, and it is bordered by a number of important countries, including Pakistan, Iran, China, and the former Soviet republics of Central Asia. As a result, Afghanistan has long been seen as a strategically important country, and it has been the focus of many great powers throughout history. In addition, the uprise of opium and meth production has once again put Afghanistan in the global center stage. Overall, Afghanistan is a country of great interest to the world due to its strategic location, its rich cultural and historical heritage, and its ongoing conflicts and political instability. The future of Afghanistan is of concern to many people around the world, and it is a country that will continue to be the focus of international attention in the coming years. Please like and subscribe the video to get notified about similar content.